Hi, my name is Glenn Beatty, U.S. Life Master. In this video, we will explore the Nakamura vs. Grischuk game, round 1 of the Tata Steel Tournament 2011 in Will and Z. This tournament will be played from January 14th to the 30th. There are 3 Grandmaster groups with 14 players in each. The rate of play is 100 minutes for 40 moves, then 50 minutes for 20 moves, and finally 15 minutes for the rest of the game, with 30-second moves increments, starting with the first move. This is an exciting game. Grischuk finds himself about to be steamrolled on the Kingside. He sacrificed a piece to gain counterplay. Did Naka respond appropriately? Let's find out. D4, Knight F6, C4, E6, Knight C3, Bishop to C4. Let's look at this position. This is a Nimzo Indian setup. Black's idea is to control E4 by pinning White's knight. Also, in some variations, Black will double White pawns by exchanging on C3. Knight to F3, D5. Now the game transposed into a Queen's Gambit. Black's idea is still to control E4, but this time he does it with a pawn instead of his bishop fianchetto on B7. White captures because he doesn't want Black to capture on C4. If Black is allowed to capture on C4, he will have a good game. He will have pressure against White's D4 pawn. Therefore, White will have to play the passive move E3, defending D4. This is what Black would like to see. Because he will establish control over E4. White wants to play E3, but first he gets his bishop developed to an active square. This move pressures White's center and gives Black's queen a useful square to travel on. A5, breaking the pin and attacking White's queenside pawns. White gives Black an isolated pawn, simultaneously creating an excellent square for his knight. Also, Queen takes C2 is an interesting move. Why? Because the C5 pawn is always hanging. It is weak. Also, by capturing on A2, Black creates a passed pawn, his A pawn. But Grischuk played instead Queen takes C5, which is a solid move. Placing the knight in the center of the board, and of course threatening the bishop on G5. Knight to C4 is another variation. Let's look at it. Very sharp and an interesting move. Black weakens his king side voluntarily, but he plants his knight on an important E4 square. White is unable to kick Black's knight because of E3 hangs. But Grischuk played H6 instead. White will place his monarch on f2 and push his kingside pawns. It's difficult for white to stop. It's difficult for black to stop this. Therefore, Grischuk decides to sacrifice a piece for counterplay. A bold decision. Bishop takes g4, sacrificing a piece. Was this mandatory? Let's look at black alternative. h5 is a move. Of course, black cannot allow this. Therefore, instead of taking, bishop takes. Let's go back. And bishop takes h5. Let's look at h5 again. g5. Knight to d7. Bishop takes g6. Now, we've seen the variation where black played f takes g6 and the queen pounced on the g6, attacking the rook. That variation looked very difficult for black. But black have the simple move f6 with a complicated position. Therefore, let's go back to the game. Grischuk played bishop x g4, sacrificing a piece. Nakamura took the knight off, of course. The knight must go. Now he take the piece. Knight to e5 check. The knight can't be allowed to reach d3. Therefore, the question is, do black have compensation for the sacrifice material? It is difficult to say. With that in mind, I think so. White still is better, but I believe black have compensation based on white exposed king and white weak queenside pawn structure. Let's see how the game continues. Doubling on the e file. But another variation for black was instead of doubling on the e file, he could have played this move, queen to d6 after he doubled. I'm sorry, queen to d6. Rook to e1, rook to e4, queen to e2, and rook to e5, rook 8 to e5. This is a better variation for black because he is more flexible with his rooks. But in the game, this is game, king back, rook to e8, rook to h3, b5. Like I said earlier, queen to d6 was probably better than b5. But Grischuk played b5, and it is understandable why he played b5. He wanted to get his queenside pawns rolling, but usually it is better to activate your rooks. And of course, I'm saying this in hindsight. Rook to e3. King to h8. King to h8 is a safer move. Just getting the king off the g file. And the game is far from over. I believe black have compensation for the sacrifice piece. A very difficult position. But Grischuk went into this combination, and Nakamura hit him with this move. Rook takes g7 check. King takes his force. Queen to g4 check. Breaking the pin and bringing the king over towards white's past queenside pawns. Threatening checkmate in one. You must be careful here. Blocking the checkmate. Centralizing the queen. Now, I believe the game is probably lost for black at this point, because where is black threats? The c pawn is hanging, and white king is safe. Black is probably forced to trade off queens in this position. Black would rather keep queens on the board, but I don't think he can do it here, so he trade. Now, this is a technical win for a super grandmaster. Of course, the only thing he have to do is gather up the a pawn and then win one of the pawns over on the king side, because c4 and c3 pawns are in essence dead. Going after the a7 pawn. Stopping the pawn from moving. And now we collect the pawn. Grischuk resigned at this point, but I think it's important that we continue the game from here, and let's see what Ripka says. Ripka Aquarium. Ripka Aquarium did some analysis on this position, and it went a little something like this. Threatening knight to f5, picking up the pawn. Check. And now the game is in for all intentional purpose over, because the h5 pawn is dropping and white still have his pass a pawn. Let's just continue until we can get a complete game. This is Ripka analysis, and as we can see, the game is over. Great game by Nakamura. Good luck, good chess. Cheers.